Hey, welcome into the Fellowship Church here in Lake County, Florida. Listen, I'm honored to spend a few minutes with you today as we read from the Bible and talk about how to start fresh this year. So I invite you to open your Bible to Genesis chapter 1, the very first chapter of the Bible. And hey, man, welcome in. So let me ask you a New Year's question. You ready? Here we go. We're into the new year. I got a big question. Drum roll, here it is. Do you do New Year's resolutions? Simple, right? Do you do New Year's resolutions? Listen, throw up your comments right now online. Let us know, yep, I do New Year's resolutions, love them, whatever. Just put the word yep or put nope, N-O-P-E, no, don't do them. I know I'm not going to keep them anyway. I would love to know, do you do New Year's resolutions? For me, I love the new year. I actually do twice a year kind of big picture goals. There's some reason for that rhythm for me. Part of it is in August and then again at the end of the year going into the new year because I like the fresh start of a new year. It's a time for me to evaluate kind of goals and progress and kind of where I'm going for this next year. It allows me to see where I am and where I want to be, kind of that whole journey. I think you get what I'm saying. For example, let me give you one of my goals last year that I set for myself. I said last year, I'm going to eat less sugar and drink less caffeine. And I'm going to tell you, man, I did it. I had less caffeine, less sugar for a good 3 weeks. I know, you're like, oh man, I thought you did it for the whole year. I did it for at least 3 weeks. I got it in, and then I just couldn't resist some of those sugary coffee drinks. So you know what I did? For this year, 2024, I set some new goals. Goal number 1, drink less caffeine, eat less sugar. Yep, I'm going to do it. I'm going to drink less caffeine. I'm going to eat less sugar. I am on a mission to make it happen this year. I can tell you in my life, there are times where I think less about my own personal health because I'm trying to help so many other people, but I am really committed to this year. But I'm also committed to another goal, and that's I want to have more rest. I'm going to take naps when my body feels like it. I'm just going to do it. Some of you that are young parents out there, a nap sounds really good. I get it. I'm just going to do those things as my body is speaking to me that I need that rest. Another goal that I've set is I want to listen to more audiobooks. I like audiobooks. I spend time in my truck, and so audiobooks are really a good rhythm for me. Or maybe when I'm on an exercise cycle, I can listen to an audiobook, things that impact my life or me personally, my marriage, my family, the ministry that I lead. I love good audiobooks. So I've got a lot of personal growth goals. I've got some fitness goals. I've got some fun goals. I'd like to take some trips this year. I want to go snow skiing. I haven't been snow skiing since we lived up in Buffalo, and I'd like to go snow skiing this year. So I'll tell you though, as I was reviewing my list of goals for 2024, I got to tell you, man, I started to feel a little overwhelmed. Like, man, have I set too many things up? Have I set myself up for failure? I've just felt this sense of overwhelmed feeling. And I started asking myself, when am I going to have time to do all of this stuff? Because it seems like Darlene and I talk about it all the time. We constantly are having conversations. If you have conversations in your home like I do regarding this, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. We talk about it all the time, that it just seems like we want to accomplish so much, but there's so little time to do it. Friend, let me just remind us, we all have 24/7, 365. That's all we get. We can't bank it. We can't use a surplus. I can't borrow from somebody else. I can't say to that person that I think's really lazy, hey, I need 3 of your hours. Let me just have those so I could use them a little more effectively. It just doesn't work that way, right? We only have so much time in a day, and yet we want to accomplish so much. And so as I was preparing for kind of this, let's launch into this new year, one of the images I had was, I remember when we did go snow skiing, because one of my goals is I want to go snow skiing this year. I remember when we used to go snow skiing, our children were very young. We lived up in Buffalo, and we were involved in a ski club on Saturdays. Man, we had a minivan. We would load that minivan up. We would pack it. And it was like we never had enough room. Or because we lived in Buffalo, we'd drive to see grandparents down in Georgia. And it was like we just didn't have enough room. We would load up. And I can tell you, Darlene is like a master ninja packer and loader of our minivan, but there were many, many trips to see grandparents and many trips to go snow skiing. When I looked in the rearview mirror, all you could see were the whites of my children's eyes because there was so much stuff in the minivan. Man, that is a stark reminder for me as I was thinking about today. This is exactly how I feel so often. I feel like life is very packed, life is very fast-paced. There are times it just feels so overloaded that I can hardly see the light of day. I look in the mirror and I don't even see the sun shining out the back window because there's so much stuff in there. And then the van, it's like it's just kind of dragging. There's so much weight in there from all the stuff. The back of the van is sitting low on the tires. My low end is just kind of dragging. Well, I can tell you, here's what I know. I'm not alone in this feeling. Harvard Business School did a study, and they said that 7 out of every 10 people here in the United States that are surveyed feel like life was characterized by, I'm too busy. Life is really busy. That's exactly what they said. Now, I didn't need Harvard to tell me that. I'm a pastor. I talk to people all the time, and I can tell you that just about 100% of the people that I talk to, when you ask them how are they doing, somewhere in that conversation I'm going to hear, boy, I'm really busy. Life is really busy. I hear it all the time. And typically they're doing good, but they know they're just too busy. And Jesus said to all of us that are busy, to all of us that feel overloaded, to all of us that feel overwhelmed, to all of us that feel like the back end is riding low from exhaustion, Jesus said a profound thing to all of us. Matthew chapter 11, Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." I mean, that is good. Listen to that again. Come to me, all of you who are weary and carry heavy burdens. And Jesus said, I will give you rest. This is like chapstick to our lips on a bitterly cold day. It comes at the right time that we need it. When we feel that sense of I'm overloaded, Jesus says, listen, I've come to take some of that overwhelmed feeling, some of that exhaustion. I want to make it a little easier for you. Now, there's one problem. I can read Matthew 11:28, and I know what Jesus has said. And the problem is sometimes I don't feel that way. I don't know about you, but sometimes I allow myself to get stuck into a rhythm of life that makes me feel overwhelmed, overloaded, packed up. And I can tell you that Jesus is reminding us in Matthew chapter 11. Listen, when we get to this space in life, we need to be reminded that He will help to carry the weight and the burden of life. And by the way, your weight and burdens of life may not have anything to do with busy. It may have to do with other things in life. Some of you that have experienced some difficult seasons in 2023, and you're looking for 2024 to be a new season for you. Man, Jesus said, "Come to me, all of you who are weary. Come to me, those of you who carry heavy burdens, and I will give you rest." And one of the things that I love about the new year is a fresh start. That's what I love about this. It's like we get a new start. It's like we flip the page from the 31st to the 1st, into the first week, into the first month. And now Jesus is not just offering us a fresh start. He's saying, I want you to start fresh. I want you to start rested. That's the point of which he's making. Now, I want to show you a passage today. Our text is really from the very first chapter of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1. I want to show you a very simple thing. I learned this from another pastor years ago. I've talked about it on occasion, and I thought we would start our year out just being reminded that God wants you to start fresh every day. He wants you to start rested every single day. So Genesis chapter 1, here's what the Word of God says, starting in verse 1. Let me read verses 1 through 5. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was over the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. And God said, "Let there be light." And there was light. And God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. And there was evening, and there was morning the first day. And then, if you continue in chapter 1, you're going to see creation on day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5. They all follow the exact same pattern and rhythm. Now, he creates different things, but it's the same rhythm. It goes the same for every day. Day 2, day 3, day 4, day 5, day 6, the same. Listen to day 6. God created. He saw that it was good. There was evening, and there was morning. In verse number 27, he tells us, so God created man in his own image. In the image of God, he created him. Male and female, he created them. And God saw everything that he had made, and behold, it was very good. And there was evening, and there was morning, the 6th day. So, Genesis 1, the account of creation of this world, is actually written. I think you probably already know this. Many of you are such brilliant Bible students. You know that Genesis 1, the account of creation, really is written more in a poem format. When you hear it, you'll hear the rhythm and the repetition of this poem as Moses writes it. Why? Because we learn by repetition. Repetition is telling us, hey, this is really important. You'll remember when you were an elementary student, or maybe you've been a teacher, or maybe you've had a child in elementary school. Whatever that grade is, that your child starts to learn addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. In those math, there would be flashcards, and we're learning by repetition. I loved math. I loved addition and subtraction and multiplication and division. I loved it. I loved being as fast as I could with those flashcards. I can remember in 5th grade, Miss Dillon bringing out those flashcards, and we had competitions versus other 5th grade classes competing to see how fast we could do addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division. I loved it. We learned by repetition. That's part of the way we learn. I can tell you, we learn even as adults by repetition as well. When you pick up your phone, I've got my cell phone right here. When you pick up your phone and you realize you've had a missed call from your spouse, or maybe you're dating somebody, you got a boyfriend or a girlfriend, and you see you've got a missed call, and you're in the middle of your day, and you're like, okay, I got a missed call. I'll call them back later when I have a little more time to talk. You set the phone back down and continue to go about your business. You might find out later when you pick up your phone and it goes, oh, you've got 11 missed calls in the last 7 minutes, I'm going to tell you, you're probably thinking at that point, I've got some kind of an emergency. I better be calling back to my spouse or my boyfriend or my girlfriend. Or you might be thinking, I've got a crazy boyfriend or girlfriend. It's time to discard them and move on because they just keep bothering me. I don't know what your preference is here, but there are times in our life where repetition allows us to learn something that is of great importance, of great value to us. And here in Genesis 1, God uses Moses to write the first chapter of Genesis and use this poetic format of repetition. He says literally these 3 things over and over and over. God created, God saw that it was good, and there was evening and there was morning. Now, it's interesting to me that this line, there's evening and morning, because it happens 6 times. On all 6 days, God created, God saw that it was good, there was evening and there was morning. For you and I, we look at this and we read this and we think, man, why did they write it evening and morning when really it's day and morning? Or doesn't our day start with the morning? I mean, after all, the first thing we do is we set an alarm to wake up, and that kind of, we typically say, that starts our day, and we kind of stumble out of bed. We do our morning routine. Maybe you take a shower, you brush your teeth, you eat some breakfast, maybe you exercise, maybe you have a time of prayer, you do a quiet time. You've got this morning routine going on in your life, and you find that as you put on your clothes and you head out to work, there's morning and then there's evening. Rather than the way that Moses wrote it here, there was evening and then there was morning. Because for us, that seems to be the way that our day works. We get up, we go to work, and when we finish our work, we come home and we rest. If we finished everything, we then can rest. I don't know about you, there's times with my profession, I struggle to rest because I couldn't get everything done that I needed to get done in that particular day. And then it just kind of, I think about it through the course of the night. That's kind of how the rhythm of our day goes. We think day to night, but God is saying, wait a minute. Now, you might be going, wait a minute, Pastor, come on. Evening, morning, morning, evening, tomato, tomato. What's the big deal here? Well, I can tell you, this would have been a really big deal to the Israelite children, to the Jewish nation. I can tell you, man, this would have been a really big deal. They would have really cared about this, because in Genesis chapter 1, Moses has been recording this for them. And you got to remember, Moses, he was born in Egypt. He was born in, and then you'll remember his mother put him in a basket, and the Pharaoh's daughter took him in, and he is raised in the Pharaoh, the king, man, the most powerful, influential person in the world at that time. He grows up in that home. But if you'll remember Moses' story, he ends up killing an Egyptian man, and as a result, he flees Egypt, and he goes on the run. But then God calls out Moses, hey, I want to use you to deliver my people from the Egyptian bondage. And they've been enslaved there for hundreds of years, and they are slaves to Pharaoh, to the Egyptian government. And God has said, Moses, I want you to bring them out of the promised land. Moses, I want to use you. And Moses is like, man, I'm not the guy. I don't believe that I'm the one that can do this. But Moses, I want you to bring them out, and I want to take my people to the land that I've promised them. And so the first people that would have ever heard Genesis chapter 1, this poem, this rhythm of the way God designed and that God created everything, would have been the Israelite people. Now, they may have heard this from Moses or read it from Moses on their way out on the Exodus. They could have heard it while they were in the wilderness, or maybe perhaps at some later time. But at some point, they are the first readers, the first listeners, could have been passed down through oral tradition to them. They're hearing the story of God's creation, and they're hearing the rhythmic meaning behind the way that God said everything. And they're thinking to themselves, now, we were slaves back in Egypt. God, you promised us this promised land. And here we are now. What are we supposed to do with all of this? And Moses is saying, guys, when you were in Egypt, your whole life revolved around one thing. From sun up to sundown, you were making bricks. You made bricks every day of your life as slaves to the Pharaoh and to the Egyptian government for them to build incredible monuments to Pharaoh and worship him. You built the roadways that the Egyptian army would walk on to go conquer their enemies. You literally were paving the way by making all of these bricks. You worked from sunup to sundown to make bricks. And if you were a slave, the only question that really mattered in your life was when the Egyptian taskmaster asked you the big question at the end of every day: how many bricks did you make? That was the big question. And man, you better have either made enough bricks, and if you didn't, you were in some serious trouble. And so here in Genesis chapter 1, God had a different message for his people. God wanted to instruct them, which is the beauty of the Old Testament. Man, when we read the Old Testament, we learn so much. Like when you go to Deuteronomy chapter 6, you learn as a young parent. If you're not sure how to rear children, go to Deuteronomy 6. You'll find out God's design and plan for how to raise a family. Well, here in Genesis 1, God's giving his design, he's giving his plan on how we're to live life. And God is saying, listen, guys, I'm not Pharaoh. I'm different from him. Your life is not about being a slave. I'm different, and I want to create a different rhythm in your life because your value is not about how many bricks you can make. You've thought that now for generations. You've thought my whole life is about making more bricks so that the Egyptian empire can grow. And God's saying, no. That's not why you're my people. I've not created you to be enslaved to the taskmaster to just make more bricks. Your days need to start with rest because your value comes in what I say. In Genesis 1, God is saying to his people, look, I created you. I looked upon you before you ever did anything, before you ever made one brick. God said to them, I looked at you and I didn't think you're just good. I said, no, you're very good, and that you have been created in my image. So what God is saying is, I've got a different rhythm for you, for my people. I want you to live not with work being the driver of your life. I want you to start with, I'm going to rest knowing that God has done enough. And rest is, I'm going to trust that what God has done is enough for my life. Aren't you glad that thousands of years later, we're not like the Egyptian slaves? We're not just a bunch of brick makers in life. Aren't you glad that we're not making bricks for the Pharaoh? Aren't you glad that we've had so many technological advances, that with all of our social progression that we've made, that our world is so much different than what they experienced? Aren't you glad that we don't go to our phones and check them on a Saturday on our days off to see if maybe the boss has asked us to come make more bricks? Aren't you glad we don't have to do that? Aren't you glad that we don't have to go to social media and see how many likes we have on our post, because that communicates our value? Aren't you glad that we don't get our value from the things that we cross off of our to-do list, because we think that's what validates, have we done a good thing or had a good day or done a good job? I don't know if you've picked up on my sarcasm here, but I'm going to tell you that's not at all how God designed you. And it started with Genesis chapter 1. I can tell you, we have a tendency in our culture that when we meet somebody, one of the very first questions we ask is, hey Mike, good to meet you. I'm David. What do you do for a living? We have that rhythm in life, and God is saying, but that's not what I'm looking for from my people. What I'm looking for is, I want you to know that I have a rhythm that starts with rest. And if you don't believe me, you can ask your children, you can ask your grandchildren, you can ask the next generation. So, because Our educational system, the way that we've trained this generation, is to think, I need to get schooling done. I need to get whatever education, whether it's an apprentice or college or trade school, I need to do whatever I do because I'm going to be a brick maker. And whatever that means to you, I'm going to make more bricks. I'm going to be a medical professional. I'm going to be a builder, an artist, or an athlete. I want to be a police officer, or maybe I'm going to go into the military, a programmer. Maybe you're thinking I'm going to be a writer, or I'm going to own my own business. There are a lot of opportunities out there. And oftentimes, people will make decisions, and oftentimes adults will drive them in that direction to make decisions on jobs or profession based on how many bricks can you make, because the more bricks you make, the more money you're going to earn. And I want to tell you, friend, that's not at all what God's design and plan was for your life. Now, I'm not against work. I think we should work. I think work is a good thing. I think God commanded us to work. I think work should be a part of our rhythm in life. I think for us to eat and us to have what we have in this life, we should work. So I'm a fan of work. Don't hear me that I'm not. I'm a big fan of work. I don't agree with not working. Unless you've got some form of a disability, I believe that you should work. Now, here's what I also know. God created work as a good thing for us. We have a tendency to think of work as a nasty four-letter word. It's not. It's part of the way that we establish who we are in this culture. But God said, work is not what defines you. Making bricks is not what defines you. Establishing that you can do more things in your workplace is not what defines you. What he's saying is, I've got a better way for you to live. I have a better way than this for you to live, is what Jesus said. And the better way is that we're going to put down the bricks and we're going to start fresh every single day. We're going to start our day with rest. Our focus will be on the goodness of God, because to rest is to trust what God has done already. So I want you to wrestle with this as you come into the new year. I want you to wrestle this one to the ground, because rest is bigger and broader than most of us think. Rest is whatever focuses you and I on the goodness of God. In fact, when you turn the page from Genesis chapter 1 into chapter 2, you'll see in verses 2 and 3, God rested. After creation was complete, God rested. On day 7, God enjoyed the goodness of His creation. See, rest is what focuses us on the goodness of God. Rest can be sleep. Rest could be worshiping in song. Rest could be reading the scriptures. Rest could be meditating. Rest could be having a good meal with people and expressing our gratitude for the provision of God. See, rest can come in a number and a variety of different ways. Rest could be taking a walk outside and just seeing the handiwork and the majesty of God's creation and reminding us of God's goodness to us. Rest could be a time of prayer for you. Rest is when you focus on the goodness of God. So let's make some application today. Number 1, I want you to start the new year by establishing some New Year's resolutions that encourage rest. Find things that allow you to just go, God, I'm grateful. God, I see the goodness of your creation. God, I see the goodness of your work in my life. I want you to explore that. And again, that could be the daily rhythms of reading the scriptures, having a prayer journal, taking a walk and spending time talking to God. Find those times. Start your new year with encouraging rest. Number 2, what are some of the busy things in life that you could eliminate? Because we can all feel packed. We can all feel overwhelmed with things that we want to accomplish or need to accomplish. So what can we do to shed some of the weight of the busyness of life? And then number 3, we learn by repetition. So what are going to be some of the daily habits, the daily patterns that we're going to have that we form that allow us to become the best version of us? I want you to establish those daily rhythms, establish those daily things. I want to encourage you, man, if you go, well, I can't wake up early in the morning. Well, maybe go to bed a little earlier in the evening. Get the rest needed so when you wake up, you are resting in the goodness of God. Rather than put your feet on the floor and it's time to go, 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 wake up going, man, I am refreshed from the sleep I had, and now let me reflect on the goodness. God, what you have provided is good. See, that's what we do in the morning time. Then we go off to work and get the work done. I'm telling you, this is a game changer. If you'll begin to practice these in 2024, you will see a change spiritually, mentally, physically, psychologically. You will begin to experience a change. Because when we do these repeated things consistently over time, we will create the right habits. And so I pray that 2024, you have the greatest year because you are encouraging rest. Thank you for being a part of the Fellowship Church today. I love you. I'm grateful for you. Let's go on this journey together in 2024. God, we close out today by saying thank you. You are a good God. We are grateful for all you have done in our lives. May we learn the practice and discipline of rest. Relying on everything you have done is enough. We can trust you. In Jesus' name, amen. Friend, go win your day today. Friend, I am so delighted that you've been a part of our programming today. I'm grateful that you have chosen the Fellowship Church to be a part of your spiritual journey. Listen, if there's anything we can do for us, let us know. We are on this journey with you. And I just want to remind you, as we start into this new year, man, it is God who has given us everything we need so we can rest in Him by trusting Him that what He has done is enough. So, if you're feeling overwhelmed, you're feeling like, man, this year I've got so much I want to get done, so much to accomplish, or man, it just feels like you are overloaded. I want to encourage you, rest in Him. Start your day in rest. Trust Him. And I am so glad that you're here today. So, again, thanks for being a part of the Fellowship Church. We look forward to this journey with you in this year. Welcome to 2024, and I'll see you next week.